Hi, and welcome back to Continual. It is time to pull out everybody's collection of web slingers. It is time for us to open up that portal and dive into the multiverse with none other than that special one, the Spiderverse. I'm your host, Jim Nettles, and let's see who all is coming in to find and see what Earth they're coming from. Kyoko.
Hi, everybody. I am Kyoko M. I am the author of the Black Parade Urban Fantasy series and the Of Cinder and Bone science fiction series. I'm also a contributor to Black Panther, Tales of Wakanda, and the Captain America, The Shield of Sam Wilson anthology, which will be out in November of this year. And I am hailing from Earth 616, apparently.
Daniel.
Yep, my name is Daniel Hands. I am on YouTube as the RPG Therapist. My latest book, Role-Playing Games and Psychotherapy: A Practitioner's Guide, is available wherever you get your reading material. Please do leave a review on Amazon. I need more. Or you can read my fantasy or science fiction in various anthologies around the world. But please come and visit me on YouTube because I'm trying to build up a following. And apparently that's harder to do than just making a video and saying hi. So hi, and which world do I come from? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows where I come from. We'll find out one day, I'm sure, but not this one.
And you're supposed to be working that British accent in to make sure that that's what brings you followers.
I've just realized I'm the Hobie of this group.
You are.
Yeah.
That is a very honorable position.
Elizabeth.
First I was going to say you need to drop what the name of your YouTube channel is.
Oh, I thought I did. I'm the RPG Therapist.
Okay. I didn't know if that was also what you used on your YouTube or not, since...
No, see, this is why I'm so bad at it. I need people to tell me how to go on YouTube. What am I doing?
I'm still trying to figure it out myself, so.
I am half of the Dead Fish books and way less accomplished than my other panelist. And I hail from Negro, Ohio, the leading cause of death in Ohio.
Okay.
And why not?
And Doc.
That's the Ohio meme joke.
Okay. I was to say, having been to Ohio, I can believe it. But hi, I'm Doc Coleman. I write steampunk comedy adventure. And I'm also dabbling in YouTube and Twitch live streaming under Doc Coleman. I do a live stream with Morgan Hazelwood on Sundays, and I play video games on Fridays. So if you're actually into that, go look for it. But we're here to talk about comics, right? I'm also a big comics fan, and I've been a huge Spider-Man fan back since I was in college, which is too many years ago, and absolutely love Miles and what they've done with the Spiderverse.
Mm-hmm.
So, going back, Spider-Man was one of the first comic book heroes I remember as a kid, right? I mean, because Dad was largely a big DC guy. He was, Batman, things like that. But I remember on Saturday morning, the earliest days of Spider-Man. And I remember Spider-Man being one of the first comics I also got a hold of in those days. So just before we even start opening up the can, which is all of the greater Spider-Verse, which is now, being unraveled. Kyoko, what was your first dive into just any of the Spider-Man?
Let's see. For me, most likely based on the timeline, let's see. It would have either been one of my dad's comics or it would have been the 90s show that most people know. I'm trying to, let's see, did we have Spider-Man comics? We had X-Men and we had some assorted Marvel. I don't think we had a specific Spider-Man one, but he's literally my dad's favorite. So that's why I know that it was probably miscellaneous ones that I picked up, but we'll start from a memory that I have a little bit more better. So I would say probably the 90s show. What was wild is that I grew up on that show so hard that I didn't realize that they made changes to things from the comics. So Morbius, the movie came out and I'm sitting here going, he doesn't even suck plasma out of people. My brother goes, that was only the show. I went, wait, what? My life is a lie. I didn't know that they changed again, but again, like I said, because I was a kid, that's the first time I had ever seen Morbius. I had no idea that they made a kid-friendly version of he sucks the plasma out instead of the blood, because that would have been too violent for a kid's show. I went my entire life thinking that Morbius sucks the plasma out of people and not blood. So that was actually like the most hilarious thing that is even related to spider-related things there. So I would say probably that, and then just any little miscellaneous ones. But the one that, aside from the show and the films, the other thing that I really, really enjoy, there's two different things. Is one is there was a novelization that was written about a particular storyline by Jim Butcher, and I'm trying to remember if I have the name. It's on my shelf back here. But it was basically a run in the comics where these basically they're like parasites, and they just suck the energy out of like animal related superheroes. And so it was this really, really messed up. He's being chased by 3 of them, and they are so persistent. It is just absolutely a harrowing ordeal. But because it was written by Jim Butcher, it's also absolutely hysterical. Like there's so many funny lines and just really great things. Now, I'm still not singing that man's praises because of Battleground, and I hope he falls down an elevator shaft. But I will plug that book because that novelization was awesome. Other than that, there's a run of comics that John Romita Jr. and J. Michael Straczynski did. And I got that when I was a teenager. When I was younger, and I had of course I had a budget is not the word. Allowance. So when I had allowance, I would just kind of go to a bookstore and see what's there. It's always kind of a crapshoot. There's no way for you to get unless it was already all there in a collection. I would just get random comics. And the first one I picked up from that one was Spider-Man Coming Home. And so it goes issue 1 through I think 6 are all done by J. Michael Straczynski and John Romita Jr. as the artist. And it is my favorite Spider-Man story aside from Spiderverse. It is so well written. It's so beautifully just drawn. And like all of the storylines from that 1 through 6 collection, I thought were like phenomenal. So that was the other half of like where a lot of my love for Spider-Man came from, was discovering that run of comics and just reading it over and over. Because it to me, it encapsulated what Peter Parker is about, just life being life and being awful to him, and him having to compensate and still be a good person and do the things that he needs to do while he has all of these horrible things happening to him. And I think that he's really a testament to the human spirit and that kind of stuff. So that's where a lot of my love of Spider-Man came from.
Daniel, how about you?
My first ever encounter with Spider-Man was actually endless repeats of the 1960s cartoon. And I remember things like Dr. Noah Body and ridiculous, horrifying puns like that. It's like, mate, come on. But also, I really, really loved the live action Spider-Man from, it was either the late 70s or the early 80s. The one that had Friedrich from The Sound of Music in it. Nicholas Hammond. Again, completely just of its time. But as far as I was concerned, it was the most amazing thing on the planet. Then obviously you had the animated series from the 90s. I didn't actually get many comics. If I'm not entirely sure I had any Spider-Man comics, but I had tons of annuals, which had short stories in them and photos and just stuff like that. And because my comic reading was actually Iron Man and the Silver Surfer, but just so many Spider-Man annuals, which are actually in my son's bedroom now, which is why I don't have any of them here, because I didn't want to wake him. And then obviously we've got Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and the latest iteration, but also we've got role-playing game. There's a new Marvel role-playing game out, came out last year before. I should know these things, but there is a very specific Spiderverse supplement coming out. I think this year at some point, and just even the main core book has certain people on it, so I can't wait.
Just for your humor value, that late 70s, because I believe it was 78 Spider-Man show, it's the reason I went for Halloween that year dressed as Spider-Man.
Because I just loved he had a tracking device that he used to stick on people's car, and I just wanted one of those. I was desperate to have that tracking device. But back then,
Call
that
Apple
was
now. They'll take care of it for you.
I said we are so glad you were not alive in this time period, or else you would have probably stuck tracking devices in all of our cars.
wouldn't need to.
Elizabeth, how about for you? What was your start with the Amazing Spider-Man in
Well,
any of
first,
the incarnations?
first, I was going to defend the misunderstanding with Morbius, because I swear he's not sure about his own gimmick half the time.
But also, sorry, just I love how the implication that sucking somebody's plasma out of them is not as horrifying as sucking their blood out.
Better than sucking their blood, right?
I was gonna say, that's what they decided on. It was like, oh, it's just but he's doing. Oh, but he's not biting them. You know, he's using his hands.
He's got his hands. He's got holes all over his hands. That's not
Right.
terrifying.
Right, the logic. Oh my god, the little gross hand thingies. Oh, they were just so gross.
You see, I think that detour was worth it. I was sitting here trying to remember my first encounter, because I feel like Spider-Man was just one of those things that was always in the background of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't put a concrete date when I first was aware of Spider-Man. I can put down the first comic I got from a free comic book day when they did Ultimates Universe, and you had the first issue of Ultimates Spider-Man, which had a pretty good Peter Parker. But I didn't really get into superheroes as much until middle school and high school, mostly because I got really into manga and anime, and learned where my library's manga section was, and that was right next to the Western comics section. And when you finish reading all the manga, well, the library now has these nice little trades, so you can pick up something and get most of a story, compared to trying to pick up a book in the comic shop and being utterly confused, because this is what happened when you came of age in the late 90s to early 2000s. Comic books were not accessible back then.
Doc, how about you?
I similarly first encountered Spider-Man on through the animated series from the 60s. I remember coming home from school and turning on the TV and watching Spider-Man and the Hulk show and the Batman TV show, and whiling away my hours until dinner time. And then I guess, that kind of evolved to the Spider-Man and Friends show on Saturday mornings, where it's like, oh, look, animation that's good. And then when I went off to college, I had a dorm roommate who was into comics and let me borrow them, and that got me into reading all kinds of comics, including, of course, Spider-Man. I quickly realized that Spider-Man was like the who's who of the Marvel universe, that you weren't anyone as a comic character until you fought and teamed up with Spider-Man. If you didn't do both, you hadn't made it yet. You can hopefully next year for an annual, right? And I was still reading comic books when the whole Spider-Man 2099 thing came out, and learned to appreciate Miguel and his world. But I kind of dropped out before Miles Morales hit the scene, and I'm a little bit regretting that. But I'm glad that Marvel's made these movies to let us pick up and see that Miles really is a true inheritor of the Spider-Man title. And in a way, I'm actually kind of fascinated with the whole Spiderverse, because it's a multiverse, but it's different than the other multiverse, because there's this connection between the Spider-Men, and they're not nearly as similar as the things in the regular multiverse. But they're all people that for whatever have been driven to put on the Spider-Man mantle.
Sorry, if I can just add one thing, Jim, before we move on to the next.
Oh yeah.
I forgot to mention, I did read some stuff. I have read plenty of Miles stuff, but actually not because of Miles, but because I adore Ms. Marvel, and obviously Miles and Kamala team up quite frequently, and they actually they were on opposing teams in a science fair once, and and mayhem ensued, obviously. But their relationship, and obviously Squirrel Girl, it was nice, and there's a cuteness to it that is sometimes lacking in other comics, even within Marvel. So
Especially in Ultimate slang.
Oh yeah.
Well, kind of. I think, and to go, Doc, kind of where you were starting down this path. When I saw the first movie, when you look at the story of Miles, and I'm a big fan of Miles. I also have read a fair amount of the Spider-Gwen stuff off and on over the years, which is always kind of fun to see that difference, and always look at the dichotomy between having grown up with the variations of Peter Parker, and the next variation of Peter Parker, and the next, looking at that same story, but going and looking at getting to see all of these iterations of people who, a variety of tragedies, have all responded in a positive way, mostly. Few exceptions. We have to have a few exceptions, right? But mostly have taken whatever tragedy has come upon them to have to pick up the mantle of being Spider-Man. And a lot of variety of ways as to whether or not, how much of it is technology, how much of it is biology, all of the different things that come into play as to how they shape and mold and craft the character. And in that notion, seeing the differences in their powers, their strengths, their weaknesses, how all that stuff plays out. And I think getting to see all of them in that play makes for a very different multiverse environment. So Daniel, kind of, for you, what's the big strength out of seeing the multiverse and the way they put it in the couple of movies so far?
Well, obviously, the first film was just mind-blowing in how, not just how fun it was, but how creative the art was. And it was, superhero fatigue hadn't settled in by that point, but even if it had, there was just something so fresh and different about it. And to the point now where you've got other movies trying to copy, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, which I also thought was adorable. But the multiverse is something that they've been trying to do for a long time in film, and not necessarily successfully. And so the fact that, and I think it's largely down to the fact that it's animated. You can get away with so much stuff. It's a bit controversial, just to bring up a controversial topic, like the Avatar The Last Airbender. Don't do live action. It was amazing as a cartoon, and the reason it was amazing as a cartoon was because you could do stuff that you just can't do with real people. And the same, I think, is I think the Spider-Verse is as amazing as it is because you can use different art styles to represent. You don't need to have any exposition at all. It's just, okay, he's got a different art style. We know he's from somewhere else. And that was true of the first film. But then the second one, when they introduced so many more, and you could tell them apart instantly, and you could even recognize which universe. For example, you had that clip from the 60s cartoon where he's just riding straight, flying straight towards you. Lego, who is one of the best agents, and Hobie and Pravita. I loved Mumbattan. I just, hands down, my favorite part of that film. I just loved it. And because they can do pretty much anything they want, and the animation style will let them, they can go crazy. They can just have fun. And we managed to have a black and white Spider-Man alongside a pig, alongside a giant robot, alongside, a washed-up middle-aged man, and a kid who's just trying to figure out what the hell's going on.
And let's be clear here, Spider Bacon is my favorite one. Sorry.
Any kind of bacon's my favorite one, frankly.
How about for you, Elizabeth? What's your big take on how they're doing the multiverse specifically for all of our Spider-Man?
Well, I was going to dig more into the art style a bit more for each Spider-Man, because it not only communicates the characters, it also communicates their universes. Before, just by looking at them, you already have some information about their universe. Like Spider Bacon. You look at him, he's a very Looney Tunes inspired design.
Yes.
So you already are getting a sense of his universe based on just that design, that is going to be probably a much more comedic universe. If we went there, physics would be Looney Tune physics. Giant hammers appearing out of nowhere, and a much more silly universe compared to Nicolas Cage's Spider-Man Noir, who you look at that, you can see the black and white, but you also can see the stylistic way he's drawing. It makes you think very much of Frank Miller's work. Mm-hmm. Not quite as grimy in the pencil work, and you still can go, okay, this is not just a black and white Spider-Man wearing a trench coat. This is already, before you announce it, you already get the sense you're looking at a gritty, hard-boiled detective Spider-Man in a much more cruel world compared to Spider Bacon. You see the one with the robot, and you see the clear anime-inspired parts of her design, and you already can start to gauge that what some of her aspects of her and her universe are going to be. And that's something you can't do nearly as easily in a live action movie, at least without getting more out there in the costuming department, which a lot of movies are strangely reluctant to really go out there in the costuming and lighting when it comes to merging multiverses. It's a real shame in that regard.
Doc, how about you?
Well, I have to admit that I generally speaking, I like the first movie more than the second one, and that is specifically because they focused on a core group of characters. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that everyone's kind of got their own style about them, and that in both movies they very much leverage the cartoon art style to represent different things. It's just in the second movie there were so many of them, it kind of blurs in together.
Yeah.
But even though they took some examples which were very different, for me it still comes down to the root of what the Spider-Man character is. It's a normal guy or gal who suddenly has superpowers and is trying to do right, but things just keep going wrong. And it's that perseverance in the middle of it that brings it all forward, and the fact that there's the one link that seems to be between all of them is not just the spider motif, but the spider sense. That in some fashion or other they all have that danger sense, and that's one of those things that really makes Spider-Man unique. Is that little bit of precognition that keeps him from getting splattered all the time.
Which was horrifyingly done in the 70s live action, where he basically had an epileptic seizure every time.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But it's also interesting when you look at the fights in the second movie, and it's like, how can you land a punch when everybody's got Spidey sense? But I think they've done a beautiful job with it. I'm really looking forward to see what they come up with the next movie. I'm a little disappointed that Spider-Man 2099 is kind of the heavy. Um, and I hope they do a somewhat better explanation of that. I felt like the explanation in the second movie was just kind of pasted on for time.
Yeah.
And in some ways it's actually kind of appropriate for Miguel to have secrets that he's hiding. Did I answer the question? No.
So Kyoko, for you, looking at just kind of big picture how they're managing this multiverse, what are your thoughts?
I think what really works here is two things. One, that they have this really affectionate tone to, and it happens that the parodies and the things that we remember the most are the ones where it's very clear to tell that the person loves the source material, even if they're making fun of it or poking holes or just doing fun things with it. So you think of things like Galaxy Quest and like with Batman and things like that, where they obviously love what they're obviously, parodying. And so even though this isn't a parody, all of the little bitty references there, it fills in the world and makes it feel so lived in. And it also just feels like a warm hug to me. That's what I think is why No Way Home did so well, is that, first of all, it was released during a time where we were all stressed out. We were exhausted. We were broke. We were traumatized from all the stuff that's been going on since 2020. And so just to have a movie that understood Spider-Man, genuinely understood him, understood all three Spider-Men, of course, and then just put together this incredibly satisfying third act where it just was payoff for things that you didn't even remember from 20 years ago. And you were just like, oh, that was so phenomenal. And I think that that's that same tone that Spider-Verse has, is that it understands the core of those characters. So then when it fills them in with their beliefs, their desires, their fears, their hopes, and all of that different stuff, you remember everybody's. It's one of those where it's so well written and so well acted that you left there with just one viewing and you remembered lines from the movie. You remember every character's name. You had favorite scenes out of it. That all of that comes together to a project where people, whoever is behind it, they just solidly understand the character. And I think that's why it's really, really blown up the way that it did. And it's not like we haven't had incarnations of him that didn't understand him, but like the level of understanding in Spider-Verse, I think, is possibly the most comprehensive that I have seen of any Spider-Man adaptation. Like I was in tears. Now I live in an area that probably is not very nerd heavy. So when I went to go see it and we get to Ben Reilly and he starts talking and I just lose it laughing because I know exactly why they did that. Everybody had to put up with the Clone Saga, and it was the most aggravating time in comics for anybody who likes Spider-Man other than One More Day. It was just a barrage of irritation. A whole decade we had to put up with that storyline. So for them to make fun of Ben Reilly like that, I was just in the aisles cracking up. I'm sure everybody around me are like, what is she laughing at? I don't get the joke. It was like, oh no, that was for the comic people. That was for all of us.
This is the deep comic joke.
Yeah, it was a deep cut. It was a deep cut joke. Because again, like even after I saw it and I told my brother, and my brother absolutely cracked up. He's like, yes, I was doing the same thing you did, laughing when they made fun of Ben Reilly after all the shit that character put us through. So I think that's it. I think that because it's a character-based story and because it's got all of the lovely, what I consider a movie like a cake. So if your cake is really good, that means that your plot and all your character, all of that stuff is great. But the frosting is what I think makes these films stand out. It's all those little bitty references. It's all those little bitty Easter eggs. It's all the freeze frame things that you get to see. And so it was already a moist, delicious, wonderful cake. And then it has this amazing frosting on top. So then just the whole, everything that you consume out of it is just like, it's on point. So that for me is, I think, why it's performing so well.
So you brought up something that I hadn't realized before, that, but with the three Spider-Men in No Way Home and with these characters in the Spider-Verse movies, especially all of the various Peter Parkers, they're they're the same character, but they manage to bring out different facets in each one. There's something that's a little bit more forward because this universe was a little bit more different, and that's actually a pretty incredible grasp of a single character to do something like that.
Well, and so looking at, and this is kind of where I was leading with some of this question, is that notion of they're all individuals, right? They're not just the carbon copy of, oh, well, you're the Spider-Man. They're all really individual characters. They have unique powers. They have unique capabilities. They have unique backstories. But they have that through line as well of character, and they have that through line of tragedy. So, Elizabeth, I'll start with you on this one. Looking at just how they've treated all the various incarnations of Spider-Man throughout in the multiverse series, with what we've seen, which one is your favorite incarnation?
That's a
I know
tough
this is a
one.
bad question. Nobody ever said I had to play fair.
I mean, because it's like, which one do I like the most watching on screen, and what compared to which one do I want to be friends with the most? Because it's going to be Spider Parvati if I want to be friends with the most. From New Delhi, because I mean, I need those hair care tips.
It's all genetics, apparently. So, and coconut oil.
And coconut oil.
Spider silk. So Doc, what are your thoughts? Who is it for you? Which incarnation we're seeing in this through line really is that favorite incarnation, and what is it about them that touches you?
That's not easy.
I didn't say it had to be easy. Nobody ever said I played fair.
Look at the live action film. Just at the live action, I'd have to say Tom Holland, because I love the fact that he's playing Peter Parker as a kid, and as all of that spastic energy of, I know I have to do something, but I don't know what to do, and I've got a million things to juggle, and I don't know how to do it. I love the way he portrays that.
Oddly enough, there's one tiny moment. It's not even a real moment in the movie, but right in the beginning of No Way Home, when he jumps on the thing and he's going, dude. And so MJ behind him goes, dude. And then he does this little arm flail. I was like, I don't know why, but that to me was the perfect Peter Parker. Like, it encapsulated his entire character in that the little flail he does before he turns around and realizes that she's standing behind him. I don't know why, but I found it so endearing and so in character for him to just be like so up in the moment that he forgot, oh wait, we're like, 7 stories up. She can't swing. It's me. Like, I thought that was so good.
I was going to say that I really like about Tom Holland is that, at least in his movies, in his portrayal, he feels like a New Yorker Spider-Man. Spider-Man is supposed to take place in New York City, but in a lot of the movies, it feels like generic big city is probably filmed in Montreal. And that's a joke that all movies are filmed in Montreal.
Yep.
No, there's a lot of them done in Toronto too. I know, because I stepped out in the middle of a couple of them.
I might be mixing up Montreal and Toronto. It might be all movies are filmed in Toronto.
Well, in Vancouver. I mean, they're all in Canada and now Atlanta. But I mean, we're talking.
I was going to say now Atlanta, because they found out the cost of living used to be more affordable than California. We're fast approaching California now.
It used to be that all cop shows were filmed in Canada. So
yeah, but I felt that was the Spider-Man whose place really informed part of the character that wasn't really portrayed on screen before. The way we see him interact with through his neighborhood and all that, especially his custom sandwich order. I loved that little detail.
But getting back to the animated series, there's so many different versions of Peter. It's hard to pick one out, but I really want to see more about Miles. He's the version of Spider-Man that actually intrigues me the most. And again, it's because he's coming at it as a little kid who is completely faking this. And it's like he goes from, I am awesome to, oh my God, I did that. to falling flat on his face the next step. And it's I don't know, there's something just fascinating about that energy.
Kyoko?
So for me, I think it's hilarious because I don't even know that he was like he's not even supposed to be my favorite. Peter B. Parker does it for me in so many ways that it's ridiculous. Like I think it's because I never thought of the concept of a Spider-Man, because again, we have Old Man Logan, we have versions of Batman that was older, like in Dark Knight Return. We've had versions of our known superheroes where we did a time skip, like to where they're older. And so that to me was the first time I had ever seen a Peter Parker that was approaching middle age. So
Sitting in the bath, crying.
Right, sitting in the bathroom, sobbing. Oh, bless his little heart. But I had never thought of the concept of like, oh, I guess I have never seen a Peter Parker that far in life. Every single time it's either been when he was a teenager or moving through his like early 20s. So that caught my attention immediately. And then the fact that, again, as someone with anxiety, depression, and what I call my grab bag of mental illnesses, to see a Spider-Man going through the crap that I do, being stressed out and overeating, being testy about being overweight, which was just an adorable little small insecure thing for him. But I think that he ended up being just amazingly relatable to me in very sad, but, frank ways. That he completely swept me off. I was in love with him. It actually took me maybe 2.5 years before I finally wrote fan fiction about him. I kept going, you are not going to lust after Peter B. Parker. Do you hear me? You have enough men in your harem. You are not.
The heart wants what the heart wants.
It's that dad bod. It's the
dad bod. It's his dad bod. I'm telling you. Like, I finally caved in and I wrote that.
I really like him as baby Spider Dad.
Yeah. I do. Yeah. Oh gosh, and that was the other thing I think about the second movie that was so perfect. They nailed that whole Spider Dad thing. It was adorable and funny, and they didn't overuse it. They didn't overuse her. It was there just enough to be the cutest, funniest thing. So he, for me, is definitely there. Actually, though, I wish you got just a tiny bit more time with our Peter from Miles's version. I'm sorry, in his universe that unfortunately passed away.
Parker.
Yeah, R.I.P. Peter is what they call R.I. Peter is what they call him inside of their little circles, because Burrito Peter is Peter B. Parker, and then he's R.I. Peter. And I always have a funny thing associated with that, because again, remember it's opening night. I'm sitting there, the lights come up, they do the little graphic, and I hear the voice, and I go, Chris Pine. I had no prior knowledge that he would be in it. I am an enormous Chris Pine fan. So I'm sure, again, another instance where people are looking at me going, what is she cheering about? But so for me, Peter B all the way, but I loved everybody. I really do. There's not a bad character in that bunch. I honestly adored every single person except Ben Reilly.
You've got me thinking about the progression from Tom Holland, young, energetic, to Andrew Garfield. I've got some success, but I've also made some bad mistakes and I don't know how to deal with it, to Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, who is like, I've been doing this for a while. I've kind of learned how to deal with it. You just got to relax. To Peter B. Parker is burnout, waste.
Yeah, it's definitely a scale of like the least stressed out Spider-Man up to Peter B.
You gotta put in Tobey Maguire dancing with the symbiote as part of Peter B. Parker.
Yes.
We don't talk about that here.
Oh yes, it was so funny that they threw that in there. And again, the spider Christmas album, that was a great touch. Oh. I love that it gets all the way through the song, and at the very end, you hear this little line. And he goes, "I have a degree in chemical engineering." I was like, "Oh, Peter, I'm sorry. Bless your little heart." But yeah, so.
All right, Daniel, who does it for you?
whoever I'm reading in the current moment, um, I actually like a lot of the fact that we're getting a lot of side spider people, which we wouldn't be getting if it weren't for the success of these movies. But obviously, for a long time, we've had Spider Women like Jessica Drew and all of the harrowing stuff that she went through. But obviously, Spider Gwen has become a big thing. I mean, even more so as a result of these movies. But we've also got Silk. Silk is awesome. Silk is just cool, just personified, but also with a really unsettling origin story where she was locked away for most of her life. And there is something about just when we were kids, we all were fascinated by the fact that spiders could climb up walls. Just as a superpower that ranks only ever slightly lower than flying. Because spiders are absolutely everywhere when you're kids, and so this the fact that we've got so many spider characters kind of taps into the fact that it's just a cool, popular topic for a character, and the Spider-Man's biggest fight is always with his personal life, and this is why Miles's story is so enjoyable and interesting to watch because he has parents. He has parents who clearly love him and who want the best for him. And trying to hide something like being Spider-Man from your parents, especially as young as he is a vastly different proposition to hiding it from your elderly aunt when you're old enough to live by yourself. I remember one of the annuals I had, he lived in a top floor apartment with a skylight, but the skylight glamorously opened up into his bathroom. But his and as soon as he got changed, he called Aunt May. He doesn't need to worry about anybody finding out. He just calls the nursing home, finds out how she's doing, and then goes to bed. Whereas Miles, yeah, I'm a dad. I've got a 16-year-old son. If I don't know what that kid's up to, something's going wrong, and we all need to be afraid. I sympathize with Miles's dad so much.
Especially when he's
there's a kind of a joke about that of like when the dad is at home watching the kids and he gets too quiet. That's when they're the normal hubbub. That's cool. He's watching sports, but then it gets quiet. Oh no, they're up to something.
Oh my God, what's gone wrong? Jesus.
Yes, that's when dad gets up on the couch.
That's true.
And that much worse when he's an inner city cop and he knows the kind of trouble that kids get into if you don't watch them.
Yep.
So, Doc, kind of looking at this great multiverse, and again, I do want to kind of tie this one into, the couple of films we've got so far. What do you think is going to happen with the third film? And what do you want? Is there something you want to see with that? But even tying back to the first couple of films, what is it in the story? What is it about seeing all these incarnations having to find a way to work together? Because we all know that Peter Parker, even though he's been in team ups and does a lot of stuff, a lot of the time it's just trying to figure out how to make it work. And if you've got a whole bunch of people that are all just trying to figure out how to make it work, but they seem to be able to do that together, is in the story so far. But for you, the ultimate sort of looking at the Spider-Verse, looking at how they're pulling all the pieces together, pulling the web together, as it were. If we kind of look at that,
I see what you did there.
Yeah,
really
Spinning the web.
I went subtle. What do you want to get out of the story? What have you gotten out of the story so far, and what is it you really want to get out of the third film?
Well, in the second film, they talked some about the idea that all of the different spider variants are connected. And they said that Miles was the problem because this wasn't his time, that the other Peter Parker was supposed to continue on for a while before anything ever shifted to Miles, and that he's upset the balance. And I want to see them follow that whole theory of connectedness. And it kind of makes you wonder, is there some other kind of power out there that is saying that the spider presence needs to be in each of these universes and is seeding it, and find a way to sort of rebalance things without doing something stupid like killing off Miles.
They would not dare do that without
Of course
we will form a mob. We
Yes.
will form a mob.
I was just say that boy is filled with too much money.
Yeah, but you got to remember, that's what Miguel was after. Is like he wanted to eliminate Miles.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, this is not the way.
Kyoko? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Jump right in.
Go ahead. Jump in.
Well, what I was going to say was I suspect what we're going to get is going to be getting more, because we talked about Miguel, and in fact it seemed kind of tacked on that there might be secrets, and I suspect we're going to get more of that story.
They're going to figure out why he is the way he is.
In order to need to rebalance the universe, because he, from what I can remember, is also someone who's stuck outside of the universe he's supposed to be in.
Yep.
And also, I suspect there's going to be some of the deconstruction of all heroes need to have a tragedy to make them more heroic. That these canon events, that these sort of tragedies will always befall Spider-Man no matter what. And this is necessary to make him a proper hero. Which seems to set up an idea that tragedy is needed for heroism rather than heroism arising despite tragedy. It may not get that deep, but I suspect we might have some discussion on that front, especially since Gwen's dad seems to so far still be alive.
Well, he's not captain anymore, is he? So
Yeah,
well, yeah, but
We have time to kill him.
she said that her canon event was losing Peter.
Peter, yeah.
well, that's what and we know one of Miles' canon events was losing his uncle, but that's the first canon event, which is the loss of a figure important to life. We have Peter Parker losing Uncle Ben so many times. But the second canon event seems to be
Uncle who? I haven't heard of him. Uncle who?
you know that guy. Not important.
Yeah.
It was somebody else in your universe.
Oh, okay, finish.
Yeah, but it seems the second canon event is all about Gwen Stacy dying going off of a bridge and the equivalent of that.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason I would expect to see a bit more dissection of that is the fact that is us kind of looking back at that event and going, was that really the best way to handle Gwen Stacy's character and Spider-Man's character at the time?
Interesting question.
And discussing women and fridges tropes and all that. One thing I'd really want to see, but I don't think we're going to see, is a gothic horror Spider-Man. Because so much of Spider-Man's, and this has been pointed out by other people tons of times, that so many of his powers also align with lots of creepy horror villains. I mean, think of how many demon-possession movies you've seen in which, someone's crawling on the walls again, go get the hose. And which you could see a Spider-Man who might work really well, a more creepy-looking Spider-Man, still heroic, just creepy-looking, who's basically running around in a much more horror gothic universe.
Yeah, it's
be Jared Leto.
Something more like a cross between Spider-Man and Man-Beast. Where he's got the extra legs and they're big spider.
I was going to say, there's one where he gives birth to himself, and there's another. Yeah, there's a bunch of really really
was
weird
that-
ones. So if they wanted
was
to go
that the
body
other?
horror, they can do it.
That's
Yeah.
the other. I remember him having to basically be reborn, getting new powers, and also
Yes.
that he now has an enemy that is entirely made up of spiders.
Yes.
Which
Yes.
I'm like, I don't
Oh.
think they did too much of that with, which is a shame because an enemy made up of spiders is great material.
Thank you. I'd forgotten about Spiders Man.
But just something a bit more out there, and I thought that might make sense if they if we are investigating weapons, posting the connections out to their logical extent of can we actually defy the canon once or not, we would start seeing some much more really out there Spider-Men.
So Kyoko, for you, what with the story so far, what have you really gotten from it, and what do you want to see coming in the third and the concluding piece? Even though we know there'll be some spinoffs, but they've said this is the penultimate part for the Miles Morales story thus far.
I think what I got out of it is, like I said, I really enjoyed just the camaraderie between the whole team in both films and seeing their differences and how they're all still tied together by tragic events and loving people in spite of knowing that they could lose them someday because you're Spider-Man and life just beats you. That's what happens when you're Spider-Man. It just beats you when you're down. It never lets up. It never gives them a chance. And that's why he stood the test of time, is that all of us know what that feels like almost. Pretty much everybody knows
He gets
what it feels like.
he gets better days than Daredevil.
Mm.
So what you're saying is being Spider-Man is the ultimate Rickroll.
It is. It actually is. Because everybody's experienced it.
Jim, you should be ashamed of yourself.
I would say he'd be ashamed of himself, but my 80s station in my town just plays Never Going to Give You Up on a regular basis, so it's just my life now.
Oops. But in terms of what I would like to see, though, I think that people's theories that Miguel is lying to an extent is true, because a lot of the stuff that people have brought up about what the comic book Miguel is like versus this one, I was like, I can see the idea, because some people have said, especially since he had the sharp teeth and a couple of blink and you miss it scenes. Like I've heard one theory that he's a vampire of some sort. I was like, oh, okay, that'd be interesting.
He's Morbius.
Right. Oh, I mean, might as well. And see, and that would be the perfect opportunity to say it's Morbin time. There you go. I fixed it. Anyway, what I'm very interested in, if the third film is going to be spent all the time with Miles and Nega Miles, or are they going to like seal that up in the first act and then acts 2 and 3 are dealing with something else? Because again, we see both of our teams have now assembled to like have a final confrontation, but like in terms of pacing, I'm very interested in what the actual plot will be, whether or not it's going to be Miles trying to escape the evil version of himself and it takes him the whole film and then there's a final fight in the third act, or if they find a way and they're going to resolve it all and then there's a different second and third act for that. But I think what I want to see most of out of everything is, first of all, please don't kill anybody. I'm too soft. I'm too soft. I can tell if any of them die, I'm going to be really upset about it. So that's my one wish out of all of this. It's like, look, you made me watch Peter Parker die in the first one, and that was already traumatic. I don't need another one. So I'm begging you, find a way to have all the stakes still be serious, but like, don't kill one of them. I think it would sour the entire thing for me. Like, it's like Endgame. Endgame, people had to die in Endgame, and it was in ways that made sense to me anyway. But I still was like, if I were to rewatch it, I would stop before that point because it's just too crushing for me. But that's my hope. Like, I really think that it could go either way. I think we're going to dive a little bit more into what Miguel is truly, not just what he's portraying to the others. But that's my one wish. Just like, please just don't kill anybody. That's all I want.
I predict Spider Pig will sacrifice himself and they will reward him as barbecue. So
Thanks.
Delicious barbecue.
Can I just add one thing though? I think what they're going to need to look at is kind of the debate about fate and free will, because they're saying that these canon events have to happen, otherwise the world will be destroyed. I mean, that's fate. Your story is decided for you. Nothing you can do can alter that. Whereas Miles's point is very much, well, I'm Spider-Man. It's my job to try and stop that from happening. And the fact that we've got the band back together and they are the underdogs now. There's just that small group along with Hobie and the girl who fancies Miles, whose name I'm afraid I've forgotten.
Spider-Gwen?
No, not Spider-Gwen, the other one.
The one with the Afro puffs. Yeah. I loved her. She was delightful. Yeah, but same thing. I forgot her name by accident. My bad.
And but they're the underdogs. They're against this entire army of spider people. And I think the Prowler Miles is, I don't think I'm not sold on him being evil. I think he's probably more of a vigilante type, and that he's going to, because obviously he has lost his father in the way that Miles hasn't. And I think he's going to help Miles reconcile his free will with the idea of losing his dad. His dad is too popular, as Elizabeth was saying. There's too much money in him to kill him. But I think there's going to be a lesson there from Prowler Miles. And part of Miguel's journey is going to be, reconciling that fate versus free will kind of thing.
That's one thing I did want to note about that I was very relieved about, because when the first trailer came out, I was scared they were going to do that. You know, that story in, save everybody in the world or save one person. I hate those. I hate them every time it comes up. Most of the time the person doesn't write it right, because it just makes you angry. You just go, okay, look, I understand that you love the person that you love. It's not right to let everybody else die to just save them. So they did it in a And so they did it in a way that it didn't do that. It went, he might be causing a problem if he does, if he stops the death of his father. So I was like, okay, good. That is the way you needed to do it, because I did not want to dislike Miles, but I would have disliked him had it been, no, it is an absolute surety that if you prevent your dad's death, it's going to blow your whole universe up. Because that was kind of what happened in What If, when what's his face tried to change his canon event, which is Christine dying. Dr. Strange, yeah. He was like, just bullheaded about it. And they were like, it's going to destroy your universe. Didn't care, kept doing it. And then guess what happened?
He collapsed his universe on top of him.
Completely collapsed the whole thing. Now everybody's dead and it's your fault, including her.
Yep.
One thing, of course, none of us has mentioned, I've just realized. The Spot was hilarious.
Oh, God.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And he is just going to be even more, he's going to be hilarious to the Power N, because obviously he's going to have all the power in the multiverse, and it's going to be epic. And I mean, that first fight between him and Miles was just
yes. Just let me rob you.
It's a great example of how to take a joke villain to being an actual threat villain without wrecking their character.
Yep.
Because in a lot of cases you're like, that escalated quickly and made no sense whatsoever.
But yeah, his gradual move into that spot, because pun, because he just couldn't get it together and felt so pathetic, and that just became his motivation. I felt so organic. Yeah, I like that. I like that you in the end kind of accidentally created your own arch nemesis by not taking him seriously, because he was just so inept the first time. That I thought that was very clever.
And to think this all could have been prevented if we had a proper institute for treating those who suffer from super conditions.
Yes. Alas, it's just not a thing.
I'm not going to slip in the joke here about conditioning shampoos. So sleep deprivation is a wonderful thing. So let's experiment around it. We've not. Hey, well, we. I do want to kind of throw just a free for all, right? What haven't we talked about? You guys want to talk about? Do we want to talk a little bit more about the villains? Do we want to, or is there anything left that you think we need to dive into about the Spider-Verse?
There is one point I'd like to make, and I don't know if it's a topic for conversation, but I think the reason these two films in particular have done as well as they have is all day. I mean, the art, the direction, all amazing, but it's the writing that's given it the oomph that, you know, and the fact that they've handled the Spot's transition from goofball to world-ending threat. The fact that they've given us enough about Miguel to know that there's something off, but we don't know what it is. Is he crazy? Is he just an outright bad guy? Has something bad? You know, just any number of things. And obviously the first film with the Kingpin, somehow they managed to make the Kingpin both literally just a slab of meat, but also very human, you know, with human motivations.
He's both a villain and relatable in his motivations.
And, well, interestingly, it kind of parallels the one from the Daredevil show. Like, he actually, like, they go ahead and they show you all of his character to the point of like, oh no, he's a monster, but you do see the very human parts of him. It's kind of awesome that we have two Fisks now that are actually like really well written and acted.
He's a monster and the only one capable of having an actual romance in that show.
Right.
He's a monster, but being a monster is how he's dealt with all the things that he's had to deal with. I kind of think that they may just come up with you know, that there's Miguel has got a fundamental misunderstanding of what a canon event is. That it's not that things have to work out this way, but this event is going to happen and it's going to be a stressor, and how you react to it is what changes you. Because with Vanessa, you know, I mean, Fisk's childhood was a canon event. Vanessa getting sick is a canon event. I could probably go on, but
if you've seen Echo, or if you haven't seen Echo yet, since we're talking about Kingpin,
yeah, that was awesome. I encourage, if you guys haven't seen it, I encourage you. That was a great show. That was phenomenal. It was really, really good.
Kyoko, do you want to tell us how much you liked Echo again? I don't think I've heard you say it enough times.
Yes.
Everything I've seen it has been very good, but I've got to dedicate time and sit down to it and focus on nothing else, because you got to read the subtitles.
True. Yeah. Very true.
What I was about to say was I was actually thinking about the parallels between Kingpin in the first film and Miles in the second film, with the fact they're both being motivated to save in their own minds to save their family and put the universe at risk. Miles we're more sympathetic to because it just might be putting the universe at risk.
Yeah, Kingpin was another one of like, yeah, he probably should have listened to her. It was like, I get that you want to bring them here, but if we collapse the universe, they're going to die anyway.
But it makes me want, but I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about that, given the circles that the Prowler moves in, that we have run to Miles Prowler, does that mean the Kingpin's going to reappear in the third movie as a way for Miles to get back to the multiverse? Given that the Kingpin was and his universe researching multiverse technology.
Entirely possible.
And despite all the destruction, was not willing to stop.
Well, the good news is this. Anytime you are creating multiverse technology, you can create plot holium all you need to get the right way out of anything.
Sorry, I'm now just thinking of, and there's a hole right there. I guess that makes a literal plot hole.
Oh, I love the bit where after the collider stops and he goes, well, another easy Spider-Man mission for me. And they go, no. The humor in that movie was so spot on, honestly. In both movies. Why I get stuck with janky hobo Spider-Man?
Well, when the third piece comes out, we'll have to come back and do this again to find out how we wrap it up. But before we get out of here and I send y'all back to your own respective universes, let's make sure everybody knows where to come find you. You know, website, social media, and of course that latest release they need to go get. So Kyoko, you are up first.
So all of my stuff is at shewhowritesmonsters.com. As I mentioned before, in November of this year, there will be Captain America, The Shield of Sam Wilson anthology, which I have a short story in. And I believe Dr. Glenn Paris, one of my associates, has one in as well. So if you are interested in all things Sam Wilson, please join us for that. I have a book out. A book coming out with Fall Staff Books. We don't have a release date yet, but I hope it will be summer or fall. So please be on the lookout for that as well. And then all my social media platforms will be Miss Kyoko M.
Mr. Hand, sir.
Good evening. Yes, my name's Daniel Hand. You can find me at monomythcounseling.co.uk if you want to try some RPG therapy where we just create characters and kill dragons and ask you about your feelings. Then do get in touch. I'm on YouTube at the RPG Therapist. If you want to get a feel for some of the stuff I do, you can get my book, Role-Playing Games in Psychotherapy, A Practitioner's Guide, wherever you get your reading material. And I just realized I didn't plug this at the top of the show. Recently I had a piece in Spider-Man Psychology, Tangled Webs, in which I look at how easy it is to beat narcissistic supervillains who can't work together. But that's an amazing book. It's edited by Travis Langley. If you want to have a look at how we can view the human condition through the eyes of Spider-Man, go and give that one a look.
Maybe you should talk about it on your YouTube show.
Do you think I have time to talk about that as well?
On the YouTube show you're supposed to be doing.
Elizabeth, where can we find you?
You can find me at deadfishbooks.com. It works in both regular Ohio and Neg, Ohio, and places outside of Ohio, or so I've been told. We are going to be starting our submissions calls sometime this spring for our latest anthology, Madame, Here's Your Sword.
Call me.
Do you want me to send you an email after? That is about hirelings, minions, and psychics, and which I will quickly say is another title inspired by the lovely person we get our cover art from, who he does pre-made cover art. Anyone who's worked in indie field has seen that, but he puts the best titles with it, so which has led to us our second purchase, which he's like, you don't want me to change the title? No, it's perfect. Leave it as is.
So you're buying stock covers based on the title and then writing the book.
Yes. The first book was Yay, They're Here, an anthology about aliens. First encounters that have to start positively. How they end is totally up to you. It is a ominous looking alien cover with Yay, they're here, which I could not stop laughing at for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Doc, where can we find you?
If you're interested in me or my work, then go to your favorite search engine and put in Doc Coleman Steampunk, and that will help you find my website at doccoleman.com. It'll also help you find my Amazon author page, and coming up soon in I believe April 20th at the Telltale Steampunk Festival, coming out with a new anthology that I've got a story in, and that's A Cry of Hounds from Eastbeck Books. I know it's on Goodreads, and it's on the Eastbeck Books website, and it should be going up for pre-order of the electronic copy on Amazon soon. And the official release date of the paperback is August 1st, I believe.
And you can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentialsworkshops.com, creatingpros.com, and of course here at Continual. And now I'm going to usher y'all back through your webs, back to, get.
Kidding.